The one, the only, Dan Miller. Thanks for joining us this afternoon, Dan.
What's up, guys? How you doing?
Good, Dan. Happy New Year.
We're doing all right.
Guys.
Obviously, we usually dive right into Lions football or talk a little Michigan football, but just like we kicked off the show, last night was something that I've never experienced in my life. Maz has never experienced. Have you ever seen anything close to that during an NFL game? What happened last night during the Bills and, of course, the Bengals?
Yeah, I mean, we lived through Reggie Brown here, so we understand what that was, and just how difficult that was as somebody covering the Lions, and all the hoopla around Barry's 2,000-yard season, and then you almost lose an extremely talented, bright young man in the middle of a football field, and we all kind of lived that moment and then watched his recovery, thankfully. I think, I was at the Joe Theismann game, which wasn't a heart situation, but it was that same type of thing where you see the players with that look on their face where something's not normal. Now, that was a leg. This was somebody who clearly was not breathing. His heart was not beating. And watching it last night, again, it's that horrified look on the player's face. They know when something's different. And they know when it's not just and I hesitate to say this, but a normal football injury that you deal with, ACL, MCL, back, something like that. And that's the horrifying part about it, is the fear on their faces. And then understanding what that young man in that moment is enduring, and you're praying that he can pull through it. So there's a million different directions that you can go with it. The simplest is you just pray that medical care, which was very quick, swift, and the ability to get his heart going again, will be enough to allow him to live a normal life and get news here soon that he's doing okay. And that's what I think we're all waiting for.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, because that was my takeaway with it, too. When I saw the players reacting that way, you knew it was different, because players have seen all types of injuries throughout their entire playing. I mean, even in high school, like I saw a guy, get a compound fracture, and that shocks you. But after a while, when you saw the look on their faces, you knew that something different was happening.
Yeah, I mean, these guys have dealt with a lot, and they're used to again, I hate to say that, but they are used to seeing teammates go down. But when somebody is in that type of distress, they recognize that this is just different. And then thankfully, that medical personnel, from everything we know to this point, was able to very quickly diagnose the situation and get him some help on the field that he needed. And hopefully we will, as I said, we don't know at this point, find out down the line that is ultimately what saved his life or allowed him to get back to some sort of normal sense of normalcy here at some point in the future. And look, you draw strength from Chris Pronger or somebody like that's had it happen to them before, or, the situation with Gary Fisher, which was different, and just hope and pray that this can have the type of outcome that those situations did.
Well, Dan, I just wanted to bring up the football side of things now. This game, I just don't see a way how they could play this game. And the way I'm looking at the standings, I think if you give a tie to these teams, it will not affect them. I think Cincinnati will still win their division because Baltimore can't pass them. Buffalo will win their division, but New England plays Buffalo this week. I'm not sure how Buffalo is going to feel about playing this game, but New England needs it to win. And Kansas City basically got it locked up in the AFC as far as home field advantage. I do think if these two teams meet in the playoffs somehow, that's where it would get a little sticky. Maybe if Buffalo has the better record, I would still think that Cincinnati should get the home game in this one. I'm just talking football only here because it's week 18.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but if Cincinnati loses that game last night, then Baltimore and Cincinnati would have been playing for the division title this week.
Correct.
So, I mean, look, from a football sense and just understanding that we're putting everything that really matters aside, from a football sense, that's a very significant game. If you're Baltimore, that's the difference between having a home playoff game and having to go on the road. So, again, from a football sense and putting aside everything with that young man and his health and his life, it is significant. And I don't know what the NFL is going to do to try to, figure that thing out, because the difference between Baltimore having a chance to win a division and play a playoff game at home versus being a wild card and having to go somewhere else, that is, if you're the Ravens, that is significant for a number of reasons. So it's not none of this is a good situation.
Of course.
But just from a football sense, it puts the NFL in a difficult spot now, and I really don't know how they're going to find a way out of it, because I do think there are some moving parts that really could have used a result last night.
Of course.
They've already said they're not resuming the game this week, not playing it next week to make a team play 2 games and then a playoff game. So it's going to be new ground for the NFL to try to figure this out and try to do something that's amenable for all the teams.
They still got to beat Cincinnati, Baltimore does, and I don't think they will. But again, that's not here or there. And again, we're talking only football here. And as far as Lions and Packers go, you're playing on an 8 o'clock game now, Dan. Your first one out of the 1 o'clock time zone here. What's your thoughts on that? Do you like it, or would you have preferred to maybe play Saturday night or keep it at 1 o'clock?
No, I'm good with it. I mean, look, I love being, those Sunday night games, Monday night games, whatever it is, Saturday night games when you're the only game going on. It's great. The downside of it is, the possibility that Seattle wins at 4 o'clock, and then we go into that game knowing that there is no chance for the Lions to win and get into the playoffs, and it's just a Green Bay win and they're in situation. I love the spotlight. I know that's what NBC wanted. They wanted Aaron Rodgers winning his in situation, and they were intrigued by that matchup. And I think a couple weeks ago people were thinking it was going to be Jacksonville, Tennessee, but I don't think NBC wants Josh Dobbs starting in a primetime game on NBC as the final game of the regular season. So this one kind of made sense. The only other one that would have been Baltimore, Cincinnati if they'd have been playing for a division. So look, I think in a perfect world, maybe it's the Seahawks, Rams, and Lions, Packers going on at the same time.
Yeah, the 4 o'clock spot.
Everybody's playing for something.
Yeah.
And there's no, because if you're Seattle, you're probably thinking in the back of your mind, okay, man, if we win and that knocks the Lions out, are you going to get that same effort from the Lions?
Correct.
That you would have if they're playing for a playoff spot? So I don't think it's a perfect situation. But look, if whatever happens, if Seattle was to lose that game, then man, your bright lights final game of the regular season, winning in for both teams. And if Seattle wins and the Lions are knocked out, then look, I think Dan Campbell's pretty good at motivating this team. We've seen them play hard all season long, and I think they would relish the opportunity to go to Green Bay, even if it feels a little bit hollow not having that playoff possibility out there anymore. But I think you got a lot of young players on this team that would love the idea of playing in a nationally televised game against Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay. So, look, whatever's going to happen is going to happen. All they can do is control their own business as best they can, and that's right now just getting ready to play on Sunday night.
Talking to Dan Miller, Lions radio voice and Fox 2 Detroit sports director. You brought up Dan Campbell. Last week when we were talking to you, you said that he was still hurting from that Carolina win when you talked to him 2 days removed from it. Did you have your meeting this week with Dan, and what was his feeling, what was his swagger like walking in after this last game?
Wanted to play on Monday. And I don't mean he wanted to go coach against Green Bay. He literally wanted to play in the game against Green Bay.
Wanted to play.
That's how pumped up he was. I think he wanted to put the helmet on and get back out there and play. But no, I think look, I had to do a radio bit with him yesterday, and we did a TV bit today, and I loved his answer for the final question. I said, you got a lot of young players who've never played in a game of this magnitude. Do you have a message for them going into it? And he said, not really. He said, I want my guys to feel this. He said, because this isn't going to be the only big game we're playing in. We're going to play in one this year, and we're going to play in a lot of them in years to come. And I'm paraphrasing here. But he said, I want my guys to know exactly what this is about. I want them to know it's a big game. I want them to know it going in. We're not going to try to soft sell it. And basically that I believe his words were, it is sink or swim. Throw them out there. Let's go. This is what you're ultimately trying to experience. And I think he's really fired up about a young team with a lot of guys that haven't been anywhere near something like this before, getting the opportunity to play in this, because I think he truly believes, and I think a lot of us do that believe in the foundation they're building, that this will be the first of a number of big games that they get to play in going forward.
100%. Speaking of big games, so the Lions obviously are going into Green Bay with a chance to have a winning record, and if the Rams help them out, with a chance to go to the playoffs. Do you feel a different level of intensity as a great play-by-play guy for the Detroit Lions when you guys play in bigger games?
Oh, I think you feel it. Yeah, thank you for the compliment. I think, yeah, you definitely feel it. I think you always have a little butterfly in your stomach before a game starts. I mean, I've said before, the day I don't feel it when the home team, whether we're on the road or at home, runs out of that tunnel and that crowd goes crazy, the day I don't feel it'll be the day I know I shouldn't be doing it anymore. I feel it every time. And when you start a game, you got little butterflies going, not knowing what's going to happen. And then when it's a bigger game, I think it's probably bigger butterflies. I think it's, it's just understanding where you're at and what you're about to view and how special it is, and that it's your job to paint that picture for the people that you're talking to through the radio and calling the game for through the radio. It's there's no doubt. I think if you didn't feel a little bit different, that might be problematic. Now, it doesn't mean it affects your performance. I think a little bit of nerves are always good. I'm a big believer in, a fear that motivates versus a fear that paralyzes. It motivates you to prepare. It motivates you to be your best. It motivates you to be at your most attentive. And I think these situations are what brings that out in you.
Hey, Dan, before we let you go, I got to give you one for Ryan and Braylon. Obviously, Michigan disappointing on New Year's Eve. They dropped that game to TCU. It was 51 points to give up. The refs were horrible. Michigan was horrible. Everything was horrible about it.
Stop the refs' fault, man. Stop it.
It was partly their fault.
Stop it.
No, it was partly their fault.
Stop it.
But that day of football it could have been the greatest two games I've ever seen played on one night. To me, it was. And I just want to get your opinion on that. I know you guys probably watched it at the hotel lobby bar or something like that. It had to be unbelievable to watch with a group of friends and stuff. On New Year's Eve, it's hard to concentrate on everything. You got family, you got all of this. I watched it again last night when I got home. What a disappointment. But do you think Jim Harbaugh stays or goes is my second part.
It sounded like there was three parts in there, Matt. So if I counted correctly. No, look, I think number one, yeah, it was disappointing. I think where Michigan is concerned, anytime you have two pick sixes, something like that, it's going to be disappointing. To see them kind of get roughed up on each line of scrimmage was a little disappointing. But there they were with a chance to win it at the end. Yeah, I thought the Roman Wilson overturn was one of the worst I've ever seen.
Yep.
But at the same time, they made enough mistakes that they need to look inward as well, and mistakes that you can't, afford to make in a game of that magnitude. So, look, that's that. The Ohio State game, great game. I tweeted as soon as it was going on, hey, Ryan Day, you might want to get a little bit closer. I feel like he pulled the chute when they got down around 31-yard line, and you're asking your guy to go out there and make roughly a 50-yarder. At that point, without getting any closer. I thought they were in rhythm. They had timeouts. They could get closer, get him more of a 35-yard field goal, 40-yard field goal, something like that. That makes a difference. And I put some of that on him. I just think he had an offense that he kind of just really took down to an idol at that point. And then on second and third down after the first down run, he was just basically trying not to get sacked. So I questioned some of that there, but that was a great football game. I felt for the kicker. I felt for Ruggles. My heart always goes out to those guys. I'm usually rooting for the kicker to make that, regardless of school, at the end of a game if I don't have a real rooting interest in the game. So, and then Harbaugh, look, guys, I don't know, man. I get the sense a lot of these college coaches don't look at the game the same way that they looked at it before. The rules have changed. The things you have to do to be successful have changed. It's not the way that it used to be. And I see, it's not about NIL. It's not. I think I read one quote that said, it's not about NIL or anything like that, but it's college football as a whole. And I'm paraphrasing. Well, what's the difference? I mean, I think for a lot of these guys, it has changed. I think you've seen some well-known college basketball coaches walk away because I just think they're like, man, I can't deal with this revolving door. I can't deal with, cash at the door for players, and that's how you recruit now. So would it surprise me if he left? No, it would not. And I think at the end of the day, too, it's a big deal to be a Super Bowl winning coach. And if he can find the right situation, I think he can walk out feeling like he put that Michigan program back on track in a good spot and go try to find his NFL. I'm not predicting it. I don't know anything, but it wouldn't shock me at all to see something like that happen.
Well, Dan Miller, before we get you out of here, I got one last question, and I only want one word out of you. And it's going to be tough because this is kind of a loaded question. How does it feel to be going to Green Bay, Lambeau Field on a Sunday night with a potential Lions playoff berth on the table?
Awesome.
Love it.
You wanted one word? Awesome. I mean,
Love
look,
it.
when you're a kid, you dream about this. This is what I wanted to do with my life, and to be able to go into Green Bay on the final game of the entire regular season schedule, and maybe your team has a chance to get into the playoffs. I'm living a dream. I couldn't be happier. I couldn't be luckier, and it's exactly where I want to be.
Well, we couldn't be luckier to have you on the call. We did another article about your James Houston sack call today, and people just absolutely love it. Your passion for this team is unmatched. It's about damn time you get to have a game like this for yourself, too. So take a moment while you're there, reflect, and you've earned every bit of it, and we appreciate you as Lions fans.
I appreciate that, Stick. Thank you. It's for all of us, man. It's for a lot of fans that have endured some things for a long time. Maybe it'll mean something, maybe it won't, but I think more than anything, I think a lot of people are happy with what's happened this year and the direction they've gone in. So it's good stuff, and hopefully we get a shot on Sunday night. We'll see what happens.
I'll take 9 wins.
Works for me, and that would mean that you know who we can go into the playoffs, and I say that
Correct.
out of respect because he's an unbelievable player.
He
But
is.
He has driven a dagger into my heart so many times
Yep.
that being able to knock him out once wouldn't be the worst thing in the world.
Well, Dan
Amen.
Miller, thank you for joining us like you do every
Thanks,
Tuesday
guys.
here on
See you,
Ermanni
bud.
Edwards with Maz. Has a
Appreciate
great
it.
call on Sunday. Looking forward to it, and we'll be talking to you next Tuesday.
You got it. Thanks, fellas.